Letter 22, Sorrento, Capri, Pompeii by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. It seems to me as if I had never before visited Italy, as if now for the first time the charm of the country was revealed to me. At every moment the senses, lapped in delight, whisper, "This is paradise." Here I find the secret of Italian poetry, not of Dante. He belonged to Etruria and Cisalpine Gaul. Tuscany and Lombardy are beautiful, they are an improved France and abundant, sunshiny England. But here only do we find another earth and sky. Here the poets of Italy tasted the sweets of those enchanted gardens which they describe in their poems, and we wonder at their bright imaginations, but they drew only from reality, the reality of Sorrento. Call to mind those stanzas of Tasso, those passages of Burney and Ariosto, which have most vividly transported you into gardens of delight, and in them you will find the best description of the charms of this spot. I had visited Naples before, but that was in winter, and beautiful as I thought it, I did not then guess what this land is in all the glory of its summer dress. Here is the house in which Tasso was born. What wonder that the gardens of Armida convey to the mind the feeling that the poet had been carried away by enchantment to an Elysium, whose balmy atmosphere hung about him, and he wrote under its influence. So indeed was it. Here is the radiance, here the delights which he describes. Here he passed his childhood. The fragrance of these bowers, the glory of this sky, haunted him in the dark cell of the convent of St. Anna. I know not whether I should prefer the view of the bay which his house, now occupied as an hotel, commands, to our own from the Cocumella. The scene from his windows is certainly completer. Situated more in the bend of the bay, turned northwards towards Vesuvius, he looked upon a circle of mountain crags embracing the sea. Our view is more turned to the west, it is less picturesque, perhaps more sublime. The portion of the bay that belongs to Sorrento is singularly formed. For the most part, steep cliffs rise from the water, with here and there a break, where there intervenes a short space of sands, hedged round by cliffs. The cliffs are perforated with caverns, some open to the air and clothed with luxuriant vegetation, others scooped deep in the face of the rock. Many of them have been enlarged, and openings made for ventilation, and passages cut down to the sands, and up to the gardens above. Every house almost has one of these calate or descents, down from the heights above to the beach, some cut in the face of the cliffs, corkscrew galleries, some communicating with the caverns. Most of them are walled up to prevent smuggling. I believe when the family to whom the house belongs resides on the spot, at their request the calata belonging to them is opened. One of the royal family had been staying at or near the Cocumella. The passage was opened for their convenience, and the keys were left at our inn, so we had full command of the descent from the garden of our house. Our calata is considered one of the best. It opens into a huge double cavern, which tradition or imagination has appropriated to Polyphemus. It is large enough for him and his flock, and within is an inner cave where the giant shepherd stored his cheeses, and against whose rough surface the luckless voyagers clung, hoping to escape. The rock he flung to sink the vessel of Ulysses still lies a furlong from the mouth of the cavern. In the morning nothing can be cooler than the sands shaded by the cliff. Later in the day the sun descending to set behind Ischia strikes on the rocks and beach, and they become burningly hot. P has got a nice sailing boat over from Naples, too small but still a wonderfully safe, good boat, considering its size, and we have a marinero also from Naples to whom it belongs. He takes care of it all day and sleeps in it at night. He is a young fellow, and certainly never shows any signs of timidity, but considers his little skiff charmed from danger within the bay. Beyond, the seas are far heavier. His father ha timor and will not let him venture. He tries to persuade us to go with him to Ischia and Capri. I am shy of this. The boat is so small, but P and his friend often sail some miles from shore and run down to Castellamare, and on calm days I go on exploring expeditions into the frequent and strange caves of the coast, or stretch across to the temple of Neptune, and roam about the ruin-strewed shore. These caverns are mysterious recesses, which the fancy is excited to people with 1,000 fairy tales. As I have said, some are like ours of the Cocumella, scooped out in the face of the rock, others, narrow clefts in the rock, open to the sky. Into the strangest you enter by narrow passages, just large enough to let the boat pass. They are covered at top and paved by the waves, which play flickering with a turquoise tint quite peculiar and very beautiful. The plain of Sorrento, which is spread on the top of the cliffs that overlook the sea, is shut in all round by a belt of hills, intersected here and there by narrow ravines, clefts, as it were in the soil, thickly clothed with various trees and underwood. The plain itself is planted with orange trees. These gardens being shut in by high walls, the walks near us are not at all agreeable. Therefore, when we leave our terrace and our beach and our cavern, it is in a boat or on mules, The rides are delightful. To Capo del Monte, which those who live nearer to Sorrento than ourselves can reach by a walk, and therefore to live nearer has advantages. But I like our greater retirement better, or to the Camaldali or to the Conti del Fontinelle, a height whence we command a view of the Gulf of Salerno, the rocks of the Sirens, and the long line of coast that runs southward, on which XXII is situated, and of Capri rising abrupt and dark. I can only compare the difference between these enchanting scenes and those of other countries which have heretofore delighted me, by saying that in all others it was like seeing a lovely countenance behind a dusky veil. Here the veil is withdrawn, and the senses ache with the effulgent beauty which is revealed. Today we visited Capri. The winds here are so regular that with the exception of a sirocco which will sometimes intervene, you know exactly in summertime on what you may depend. At noon the ponent rises, a west wind brisk and fresh, which crisps the sea into sparkling waves that dance beneath the sun. This wind goes on increasing till about 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and then dies away. At about 9 or 10 an air comes off from Vesuvius, a land wind, in fact, which lasts till morning. Thus to go to Capri it was necessary to set out early to profit by this breeze, which wafted us southward to the island. I do not know anything more striking than the manner in which, as we stretch out from our bay, the island of Capri, with its 2 peaks and beetling cliffs, rises upon us. As we ran down towards it, headland after headland opened and disclosed the bays between. In 2 hours we reached the island and ran into the little bay in which the town of Capri is situated. We then transferred ourselves to 2 small boats for the purpose of visiting the grotto Azzurro. We were rowed under the high, dark, bare, perpendicular cliffs, and with anxious curiosity I looked for the opening to the grotto. The mountains grew higher, the precipices more abrupt and black, as we rowed slowly in the deep calm water beneath their shadow. At length we came to a small opening. It was necessary to sit at the bottom of the boat as it shot through the narrow, low, covered entrance. Within, the strangest sight is revealed. We entered a large cavern formed by the sea. The hue resembles that which I mentioned as belonging to the caves of the Sorrentine coast, only here it is brighter, a turquoise, milky, pellucid living azure. The white roof and walls of the cave reflect the tints, and the shimmering motion of the waves being also mirrored on the rock, the effect is more fairy-like and strange than can be conceived. This cave was discovered by 2 Englishmen who went to swim under the cliffs, and penetrated by chance its narrow opening. It deserves the renown it has gained. I cannot explain from what effect of the laws of light this singular and beautiful hue proceeds. Partly it is the natural azure of the waves of this bright sea, which entering reflects the snow-white cavern, and is turned as it were into transparent milk. Another cause may be that the walls of the cavern do not reach deeper than the surface of the water, they just touch it, and the sea flows beneath. The water is icy cold, and the adventure would be perilous, but a good swimmer might be excited to dive beneath the paving water, strike out under the cave, and seek for wonders beyond. After lingering some time in this favourite grotto of the Nereids, which they have, since the creation till the present time, kept sacred from our intrusion, we returned to Capri and hired donkeys for our ascent to the palace of Tiberius, which is situated on the summit of one of the mountain peaks of the island. We had several guides. The woman that accompanied me attracted me by her extreme beauty. She had that noble contour of countenance that I so particularly admire, a beauty at once full of dignity and expression. The sun burnt bright above, and the way was fatiguing. We clambered up through vineyards that clothed the mountains, sides and poda or small farms, sown with grain and prolific in the huge prickly pear, which grow as giants. We reached at last the remains of the palace of Tiberius. A part of the walls and many portions of mosaic pavement remain, as well as the relics of a way down to the sea, of very solid yet elaborate workmanship. The view from the summit, where a portion of the ruins has been turned into a little church, is more grand than anything I ever saw. The Bay of Naples on one side, that of Salerno on the other, with the coast on which XXII is situated, bounding the eastern horizon. There is a peculiarity in the way in which the steep promontories of the southern Italian coast abut into the sea, and in the hues of ocean as it embraces the rocky shores, which those who have not visited the south cannot conceive, which I never saw till I came here, but which satisfies the mind that this is beauty, that here God has let fall upon earth the mantle of glory which otherwise is gathered up among the angels. We had brought provisions with us, and dined on the sort of platform at the summit, and here, in one of the ruined chambers where the mosaic pavement is entire, the peasants dance the tarantella. On mainland this dance is forbidden, at least for the 2 sexes to dance it together. Why, I cannot guess. As far as we saw, it is more decent than the waltz. The couples sit and turn round each other, but without touching even each other's hands, for these are occupied by the castanets. 2 or 3 of the women were handsome, but none so attractive as the woman who was my guide. As we descended, I talked to her. The wretched lot of these poor people is very sad. In England we see and read of the squalid condition of the poor, and when it is contrasted with the luxury of the rich, we feel deeply that there is something rotten in the state. But while we are aware that our climate fearfully increases the sufferings of the poor, we know that to keep out cold and hunger is costly, and the suffering does not appear so causeless and arbitrary as in this fairy island. Here, where the sun in all his splendor kisses earth, which, well cultivated and fertile, yields plenty, and where, moreover, the sea is abundant in fish, the heart rebels yet more vehemently against the hungry poverty of the hard-working peasants. Fish and meat they never touch, all that is caught of the former is taken to Naples. Macaroni they get on festivals, at other times they live on vegetables, nothing so wholesome as the potato, the prickly pear chiefly. The better off among them indulge now and then in polenta, the flour of Indian corn made into porridge. They have no milk, weak sour wine or water is their drink. One result of this bad fare is the mortality among the children. My Juno-looking guide had had 4 children, one only survived. Poor little fellow, he ran beside his mother, and she looked on him with anxious fondness, for his complexion and figure all spoke disease. To suffer is a different thing under this sky. They have had food, they work hard, but nature is their friend, they are not pinched with cold nor racked by rheumatic pains. Thus my poor woman, in whom I grew interested, had nothing morose, scarcely anything plaintive about her. Sono sempre allegra, she said. I am gay, we ought to be gay. Simo cum Dio vule, we live as God pleases and must not complain. My heart aches when I remember my poor children now in paradise. I cry when I think of them and that little fellow, and she cast an anxious maternal glance on him. He is not well, heaven knows he was not. Ma allegra signora, the Virgin will help us. And she began in a sweet voice to sing a plaintive hymn to the Virgin. Poor people. Their religion is hung round with falsehood, but it is a real comfort to them. Sickness and all evil comes from God and must be home therefore with patience, and the great duty is to be gay under all, and to serve God with a cheerful, as well as a pure heart. I should have liked to have tried, at least, to have done some real good to this woman, whose countenance and voice and conversation gave her distinction. Nothing could be more simple and unpretending than her talk, but it had a stamp of heart, joined to that touch of the imaginative, peculiar to the Italian peasantry. English tourists get very angry at the perpetual demands made on their purses during their excursions. Dammy qualch co salutes our ear too often, but poor people who can wonder, I have told you how they fare. At Sorrento oranges are the staple of the place, that and hewn stones. The poor man who has a mule considers himself comparatively well off. He and his mule carrying oranges and stones support his family. They often work all night, lading the boats going to Naples with oranges, and by day they labor at the quarries. The nobles do not reside on their estates, and there is no help for the poor. There are many convents, but none among them are charitably disposed, so that, except the archbishop, there is not a single individual or community that turns a pitying eye on the ill-paid, overworked laborers of the soil, while the abundant riches that flow from this soil and from their ceaseless industry are drained away to Naples. The people are particularly handsome, even the old are good-looking. They say there is something in the soil and air particularly good for health and comeliness. I have seen no hags. Old women with happy-looking faces, graced by the placid, picturesque beauty of age, sit at their doors spinning. No one can talk to them without perceiving latent, under ignorance and superstition, great natural abilities and that heartfelt piety which springs, as our higher virtues do, from the imagination which warms and colours their faith. Poor people! How I long for a fairy wand which would make them proprietors of the earth which they till, but must not reap. How sad a thing is human society! Yet it is comforting, even where we find the laws by which it is said to be held together, but which ought rather to be likened to an iron yoke, pressing it down and depriving it of its native strength and elasticity. Yet, I say, it warms my heart when I find the individuals that compose a population, poor, humble, ignorant, misguided, yet endowed with some of the brightest gifts of our nature, and hearing in their faces the stamp of intelligence and feeling. I never lived among a people I liked so well as these Sorrentines. I hope I am not deceived, but Mr. Cooper, who sojourned here a few months, and Mrs. Stark, who lived here for years, evidently regard them with more liking and esteem than the poorer classes usually inspire. Our way of life is regular enough, as in hot countries it always must be. The mornings are cool and pleasant. My bedroom window with a balcony looks on the northern mountains, and the first opening of my eyes is upon orange gardens, shadowy groves and green mountain-tops, with peeps of the sea between. At noon, when the sea breeze rises, my friends sail. Sometimes, when the breeze is not too stiff, I join them, and we stretch out till the whole of Capri opens on us. When I am not there, they venture further and they bathe. The sea is so inviting that they spend an hour or two in the water. We dine, and our cook being good and the viands excellent, we dine well, at 2. At 4 or 5 we either betake ourselves to the boat, and cross the bay to the temple of Neptune, which is at the point of the first headland, or the mules come to the door, and we take various rides. Or, if we at times repeat the same, its beauty always seems new. We are shut out from walks in the immediate vicinity, as to trudge between high stone walls is not pleasant, but in our excursions we find plenty of occasion to clamber up and down the steep mountain paths. The hills are bright with the broom in full flower, and the myrtle begins to show its stars among its bright pointed leaves. On the plains, which are often found near the summits of the hills, the rocky crags rising higher round as a hedge and shelter, wheat is sown and flourishes. One of our favourite rides is to the other side of the promontory, where a natural arch once stood, resembling the Prespisch Thor of the Saxon Switzerland. It is now broken and ruined. Once going there, my friends thought that they could easily reach the sands beneath and bathe, or find a boat to take them to the rocks of the Sirens, but after a rough precipitous descent of some length, they found the way grow on them. They were apparently as far off as ever from the sea, and they returned. I spend the evenings on our terrace. The nights here are wonderful, and I am never weary of observing the loveliness of the skies. 24 o'clock, a movable hour which is fixed for half an hour after sunset, never in this climate falls later than 8:30. By that time it is night, but the extreme purity of the atmosphere gives to darkness a sort of brilliancy, such as a black shining object has. The sea is dark and bright at the same time. The high coast around does not assume that gigantic, misty appearance hills do in the north during dusk, but they stand out as well defined as by day. If there be a moon, we see it floating in midair. We perceive at once that it is not a shining shape, plastered as it were against the sky, but a ball which, all bright or partly dusky, hangs pendant. Its light is painfully bright. The extreme glittering whiteness fatigues the eye more than daylight. In the north we often repine that we have not 2 moons, so always to enjoy the use of our eyes in the absence of the sun. In the south, the interlunar nights are an agreeable change, at times almost a relief. By the moonlight we can perceive the smoke ascend from the crater of Vesuvius. If she desert the night, a lambent flame shoots up at intervals. I may have wearied you by my various accounts of the evening hours which, to a lover of nature, are so enchanting. In other places a sense of tenderness, a softening influence has fallen on my heart at that time. But here, the glory of absolute immeasurable beauty mantles all things at all times. Yet not so. Lo, a sirocco comes to blot the scene. Nothing can be stranger than this sirocco. At its first breath the sea grows dull, leaden, slate-coloured, all its transparency is gone. The view of the opposite shore is hidden in mist. The near mountains wear a deeper green, but have lost all brightness and cast weird shadows on the dull waters. This wind coming from the southeast is with us a land wind. It rolls huge waves on the beach of Naples, but beneath our cliffs the sea is calm, such a calm. It looks so treacherous that even if you did not hear of the true state of things, you would hesitate to trust yourself to it. At a short distance from the shore the wind plays wild pranks. Here and there it seizes the water as a whirlwind, and you see circles emerge from a centre, spread round and fade away. P. went out in his boat about 100 yards from our cavern. Even there, though in apparent calm, the skiff was whirled round, and nothing but letting go the sheet on the instant prevented her from being capsized. The heat is excessive. Everyone appears to be seized with feverish illness. Nobody wishes to eat or move. The early setting and late rising of the sun in this high latitude, making the nights long, gives the earth and atmosphere time to cool, and it is thus that the heat of summer is often not so oppressive as in the north, otherwise it would be intolerable. Imagine our Dresden length of day with a Neapolitan temperature. No one could bear it and live. But our nights are cool, our early mornings even chill, and thus nature is refreshed. Only this does not occur during the periods of sirocco. Then night and day the heat lies like a heavy garment round our limbs. Fortunately 3 days is its utmost, 1 or 2 its usual, extent. It vanishes as it came, no one knows how. Nature and our human spirits come forth as after an eclipse. The world revived looks up and resumes its natural healthy appearance. We have visited Pompeii. A greater extent of the city has been dug out and laid open since I was there before, so that it has now much more the appearance of a town of the dead. You may ramble about and lose yourself in the many streets. Bulwer, too, has peopled its silence. I have been reading his Hook, and I have felt on visiting the place much more as if really it had been once full of stirring life, now that he has attributed names and possessors to its houses, passengers to its streets. Such is the power of the imagination. It can not only give a local habitation and a name to the airy creations of the fancy and the abstract ideas of the mind, but it can put a soul into stones, and hang the vivid interest of our passions and our hopes upon objects otherwise vacant of name or sympathy. Not indeed that Pompeii could be such, but the account of its last days has cast over it a more familiar garb, and peopled its desert streets with associations that greatly add to their interest.